Hello and welcome to the Guardians 300 channel. My name's Graham French. I'm hosting this with Jennifer Roberts. We're going to be speaking to Mick Stott, who is the founder of Guardians 300, and he's going to give us a bit of history and the ideas behind why he came up with the Guardians 300 in the first place. Over to you, Jen.
So Mick, I came across you through a mutual friend, and I've been searching and looking for an outlet for everything that I've been striving to do as a lone ranger, so to speak. Saying to this friend, to Jem, that we needed numbers. Numbers were absolutely imperative, and we needed people who were skilled. And as Universal Energies go, that you came up to Jem's life, and then I found out about what you're doing and how you're doing it and how focused it is, and being blown away by that actually. And saw your heart, a veteran's heart, that has birthed something from your old skill set into the service of the collective. Now that blows me away. I carry my granddad's belt with me everywhere I go, that he had in World War II, that he made with his blood, sweat and tears to keep himself sane in the Japanese prison camp, that he was there for 4 years. And so I keep that with me. So when I witness people like Graham and yourself and see that same heart that my granddad had, because he was you, in that he came back, he saw what he saw during that time. And instead of being on his knees, instead of staying quiet, he made Parliament's life hell, and he got things done for the people. I walk the streets with him every weekend, sucking black bullets, doing the work. He was asked to join Parliament and he said no, because he couldn't pressure them from that side if he took a wage from them. And so when I looked at you and met you and we went on that walk in the countryside, just for a quick walk, I'd spoken to Jem and said that he's got the same heart that my granddad had, a passion and a drive for a greatness, for people to have the opportunity to find their own greatness and find their own potentials. And I think what you've been seeing going on, you were realizing that that opportunity was getting smaller and smaller and smaller for people. And so you've birthed something that is becoming more and more powerful by the day, not because of just you, but because you put planting seeds in people's hearts of the potentials of their own greatness and giving them the tools and skill sets that they need to be able to facilitate that. So before we start, I want to say thank you. And I want to say you've made a huge impression on me already. And that's why I've done what I've done so far to try and support however I can. And so I'd love people to hear about you, the heart that I saw, and how they can get involved to find their path to greatness throughout the most troubling times, because it's in these times, the most troubling times, that you find your greatest potentials. The opposing force can really help you level up real quick. And I tell people that a lot in the spiritual teachings that I do. So please take it away and let people know what I witnessed.
Well, thank you, Jenny. I'm probably as old as your granddad.
No.
and you know, I'm a granddad myself. I've got lovely grandchildren, and of course all our grandchildren are lovely, right? But some of us are a bit more biased about our own. So so I've got grandchildren, I've got children, and what really drives me is to make sure that they have the freedoms to enjoy everything that I enjoyed. And people like your granddad were the ones that actually they were in foreign climes, fighting for all of those freedoms that we are now led to believe are given to us by someone, when in reality they are not. We are spirit, simple as that. Even my cat badge, the cat badge that I joined the army, of which there were only around 300 of us throughout the whole of the British Army, which was the Army Physical Training Corps. I was a Royal Engineer when I first joined. And then I got fed up of working so hard, I thought, well, I might as well be a PT instructor. And any combat engineers out there would know exactly what I'm talking about, because I was bottom panel party and I was right of bridge. And it was back-breaking work, a bit of route denial and a bit of minefield clearance. And minefield laying, and all sorts of stuff. And that's really what shaped me. You know, it's funny how spiritual you become when you think you're going to die. You know, you meet all these guys that say, well, I'm not spiritual, I'm an atheist, and then put them in a situation when they don't think they're going to be around for very long, and it's amazing how spiritual they become. And of course, my cat badge does mean mind, body, and spirit. So even our core journal is called Mind, Body, and Spirit. And of course, I think what's happened is we've sort of slackened off since the Second World War. The country really has had no reason to band together and pull together. And that's why it's been so easy to pull us apart. So I observed this. I was over in Asia working with international sport and top-end business at the level of senior management teams and boards of directors. And I was doing mindset type work and helping people fine-tune their performance. And I came back, and one thing that really jumped out at me straight away was the fact that we were being behaviorally conditioned. And I recognized this because I trained people when I was in mentally and physically for war. And we did all of the same tactics. They were all the same techniques that I'm currently witnessing. And so I thought, well, this doesn't look right to me. Then when I started to dig and realize what's happened to the British forces, how Langley, Brockbank and Robbins signed the British forces up in 2017 after Brexit, I then started to question things. It was based on that I realized that we've got a lot of top-down things going on. I joined the World Freedom Alliance, and I realized that we were doing notices and we were doing a top-down process, which they could actually delay for a long time. For me, we're actually going to win this with a bottom-up process to meet the top-down process. And for me, bottom-up means that we get back to some basics. Our police, if they're following unlawful orders, become agents. And all I've seen at this moment in time, in all the things I've observed, is police acting unlawfully, arresting people when in reality they shouldn't have been arresting people, stopping people, asking them where they're going when they shouldn't have been doing that either. Because these are all our basic freedoms that are slowly and not so slowly now being taken away. And if you look at some of the new acts and statutes that are being brought in, the legislation that's being brought in, you can see that they're squeezing a particular group of people that they call the anti-vaxxers, the non-scientific people, into a certain space. Well, in reality, when people start to wake up, and they will wake up, and in reality, we don't need everyone to wake up, because it wouldn't actually take that many people to change this. And so the Guardians 300 was created to act as an energetic focal point based on peace and based on honor. You know, if you look at the original job of the constable, they were chosen by the people for the people. They were paid by the people. The reason a constable carried a whistle was so that if he blew it, people would come to his aid. Yes. Now, I wonder how many people would actually do that in this day and age. Yes. If the police blew their whistle because they were struggling. And that's the degradation of the relationship that the government have created.
Yeah, they might feel the police were tricking them into something. That's what would happen now, maybe. You know,
well,
rather than...
and the question is, do they educate them? So the Guardians 300 was created as a gateway to train people to be peace constables.
Yes.
You know, and in my world, we want to create a greater connection with peace, with the police. We want to remind them what they should be doing. You know, when mainstream media starts to tell the truth, which is highly unlikely because of who owns it, then people are going to become more aware. But essentially, people are slowly but surely waking up. And I know that some members of the police are as well, because I always talk to them at the protests and the rallies that I go to. I always talk to the senior commanders, and I talk to the police, because in reality, they're part of our community.
Yes, they are, and I think that's the thing to remember as well, that on all sides of the spectrum is that ego can be taken out of it in a great deal of that. Do you then, if a police officer all of a sudden, because I've seen that same twinkle of questioning and of thought process in police officers' eyes lately, and we can all be controlled in personal relationships. We can control and condition ourselves to be either prime tip-top condition or broken human beings by conditioning ourselves into lower frequency vibes. But to be able to be accepting and also be open to people saying, I've woken up. It's like waking up out of a spell. When you wake up out of conditioning, and police, like soldiers or very much trained and conditioned into their role. And so that has been happening to them as it's been happening to us. But they're doing it every day, and they're putting a uniform on. So everything is reinforcing that conditioning. So I do think it takes a lot for them to break out of the veil of not being able to see what is going on. But the seeds are there definitely in more police than they were in 2020. And I think it's important that we can be open to people saying, yeah, I went along with something I maybe don't feel comfortable with now.
Well, let's look at it. Let's look at it really simplistically. If you go into a combat situation, it takes quite a gutsy person to fight against an enemy that's bigger than you. Yeah. And then you start to see the quality of character when you're in those types of situations. So if we now face a large number of people, it's only quite courageous or stupid characters that literally will engage in that situation. Now, if you look at the way the police are acting at the moment, when they arrest someone, they never arrest them in ones or twos. As always, literally, they come mob-handed. And the challenge with that is the impact that it has when people observe that. And of course, as with all things, any type of combat or war fighting is about momentum. And if you can create momentum with well-aimed strategies that lead the way and that open many fronts, then you're generally going to have more of an opportunity to create a situation that's in your favor. And of course, what are we talking about? We're actually talking about training as many people to be peace constables that exist in the police, so that we energetically start to get back our sense of community. You know, I used to think in the early days, and some people on the Guardians are saying, you know, we need to have a good scrap, we need to sort this out violently. You know, there's going to come to a, you know, it's going to end up being aggression. And the challenge with that is it just doesn't work with the population. The way you beat a dictatorship is simply by creating a system that makes them obsolete. That system has got to be representative of community. And for me, for that to be representative of community, it's got to have all elements of the community in it. You know, with all the service people that I've worked with and helped regain their lives from post-traumatic stress disorder, that a man can rationalize and make sense of a man fighting a man. They can make sense of that. But the moment there are women and children in that situation, they find it very, very difficult to make sense of that. And those are the things that tend to stick with them the most, along with them losing some of their comrades. So, you know, so the thing is, and what I find with this, you know, initially where I thought, yeah, what we actually need is a group of really strong standing men to provide this real sort of sense of wall, of you know, terrifying wall of men. But in reality, that's a lot of rubbish. What you actually need is a representation of your community to stand and say no to these agents. Because if you've got women, children, and a community actually standing together, saying no, what you're doing is wrong, that will have far more of an impact.
Absolutely, and the lasting one.
Yeah. And when they mean no, and they stand up together in bigger numbers, then the size of their enemy, the way they perceive us, gets bigger. Absolutely. What I've seen is a slow degradation of community. This is one of the tactics they've used to create fear and to separate people.
Absolutely.
And it's a very basic tactic. We need, you know, a sense of community is a third of your life. Whether that community is your family, the quality of your relationship with your family is the quality of the relationship you have with yourself. You know, if you love yourself, there's a good chance that's going to touch everyone around you. And of course, by separating people that need that touch, then they've broken down communities. I used to think that if we would line up a group of men, that would be quite an awe-inspiring situation that would make people question whether or not they wanted to engage with it. But actually, line up a community and say, okay, soldiers, okay, police, what did you actually swear your oath on? What was your oath about? Your oath was to protect and serve us.
Yes.
And you're following unlawful orders, or you're following these orders from people that actually have no consideration of us. Because they're being financially incentivized.
That's right.
And I think that's the main thing.
Say again?
Sorry, that's the main thing as well, because I was told multiple times during basic training and beyond, you cannot be made to follow an illegal order that was drummed into you.
Yeah.
Well, and you have rules of engagement. The police have rules of engagement.
Yes.
They have the 4 E's. And even if they're going to enforce, which is the last measure, by the way, they still have to follow the conflict management model. So they're not allowed just to aggress you. They have to have a reason to do that. You have to be acting unlawfully. And I haven't seen that on a lot of the protests, bar one. And the people that were encouraged to act unlawfully were being encouraged by people that are controlled opposition or professional provocateurs and crisis actors who are enticing people to act unlawfully, so they give the police a reason to arrest you.
So I witnessed something beautiful in the London protest, not the one that's just gone, but the one before. And there was these big, beautiful, bulky men in their gym t-shirts, and I wish I could remember the name of the gym. It was some gym in London. And so hopefully they'll see this. I've spoken about it often since. And a guy had dropped a bottle. He was aiming for the bin. You know, he wasn't littering at all. And so he went to pick it up. And before he could pick it up, about 15 police officers semicircled him, you know, against the wall, as if he was deliberately littering. Of course, the guy's trying to explain, I was picking it up, you know, I'll pick it up now, you know, let me. And so you could see that was, and these guys had witnessed it, and they made their way through this wave of the crowd. And they semicircled the semicircle of officers and I thought the message is getting across, because they stood there. You can imagine the bellowing voices, real close, face to face, and they just started to shout in unison, "Let him go, let him go." They didn't break rhythm, they didn't swear, they didn't say anything else other than "let him go," with one hand up, the other hand behind their back, really showing that they weren't going to show any signs of aggression no matter what the police did. And it took a few minutes, but those police officers started to realize that these guys aren't going to move. They're just going to keep chanting, "Let him go," at which point there's 10, 15 screens or more onto what is happening. And of course they let him go. And it's a joyous occasion, because they put the guy up on the shoulders like he's a piece of paper, because they're all so strong, and go off into the wave of people with him. And one of them high fives one of the officers. I thought, that is so powerful. It is so much more powerful than those guys going up to those officers and you know, screaming in their faces, trying to meet force with force. And
it doesn't work.
It doesn't
work, Jen.
It doesn't. And the greatest esoteric knowledge that I can teach is that within yourself, within your own divinities, within, you meet opposing force with opposing force. You don't try and match the forces. And so they did that just instinctively that day. They met quite an aggressive move from the police officers initially to arrest a man for doing nothing wrong. But they met that with not anger and aggression. They met that with just righteous indignation and firm stance of, this is our intent, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're not going to do, and we're going to make it known to everybody. Let's make this public. And so that
I would call that assertion. Yeah.
Wow, it was assertion. You're right. It was assertion. Beautiful.
Assertion's about win-win.
And I've got a question as well, Mick, because I've seen this a lot, because obviously I've not been on any marches as of yet, and you've been on quite a few. I'm quite troubled. Well, I'm saying quite troubled. I'm very troubled by what I see are mainly male officers. They seem to be picking on lone female protesters and elderly female protesters a lot. Do you think that's to get an overreaction from the crowd?
Yeah. Because if they arrest a woman, we're more likely, in their minds, to go and defend a woman. This is the thing that we're talking about soldiers. You know, when a catastrophe involves collateral involving children and women, it's quite a devastating thing to experience. And our natural instinct, I think, is to make a defense in that way for most men. And, you know, I don't apologize for saying about men and women, because ultimately you can be in a male body and be very female, and you can be a female body and be very male. So I refer to the energy you exert to achieve your goals. And what I see is when you get that kind of thing going on, it makes people volatile.
Yeah.
And of course it acts as a little warning as well. It's almost saying to people, we don't care who you are, you're going to get arrested.
Yeah, there's
Actors
no
and
no
warning.
bars, no levels to
Yeah,
where
no-
we'll
no
go
bar
to.
if you- Because they've done the same with disabled people.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're disabled, you're going to get arrested. And it's scare tactics, you know, but we understand that fear gets results very, very quickly. That's why they've used so much fear.
If they can get people into that triggered response, that's where, and this is where I think what you're doing alongside others is a beautiful thing, because not only is it good to change the tide or move the tide in a different direction as to what they are planning to take it in, but also as a lasting healing process. Sometimes, more often, to be honest, in any spiritual coaching I do, the more lasting, more impactful healing that we can help facilitate somebody process is actually in the darkest hours, in the darkest shadows. So when the people who are gaining through your training, they're actually healing old wounds that they haven't dealt with yet, maybe from the battlefield. And that could be from your walk of life if you haven't been a soldier, and or the soldiers that you're dealing with, in them doing something fantastic for themselves and the collective in this present moment. They're time traveling because they're being tested, i.e., like Graham said, women being, and like you said, disabled people being arrested in crowds. That takes somebody who has been in the battlefield and seen the collateral damage of women and children and disabled people back to that moment. So the fact that you are preempting that, it's just covering a lot of bases for me for people's lasting healing, and that is a seed that will take the collective forward in a far more positive light than, like you say, trying to mimic the force that we're being met with. And I think this is what they underestimated within people within the collective as yourself, to see this and know this and
in my world, choice is about never becoming the switch for the energy that you don't want to experience.
Absolutely.
If you never engage with it, you never become the switch for it. Anyone can fight. It takes absolutely no talent. I mean, you know, there are talented fighters out there, but it takes no talent to scrap.
Yeah.
In reality, it takes a lot more talent to articulate your thoughts and hold someone at bay, and that's literally what we're going to be doing, because ultimately that takes a bit of skill. And equally, never becoming the switch for someone else's aggression is really quite important.
And that leads really into the next question, Mick, is what sort of people or persons are you looking for the common law constabulary? Is there a certain personality type you're after?
Uncle Tom Cobley and all, really, Graham. You know, we are not precious about who comes in. Look, we're going to say this, you know, if you're the type of person that wants to get drunk and have a fight, you're probably coming to the wrong group. Because there are people that want to do that, and that's fine. If that's what you want to do, you know, one thing you learn in life is you make choices and you pay you reap the rewards, or you pay the price for what you do. There is no escaping karma from my perspective. You know, whatever you put out there, you get back. It's only a matter of time. You know, somebody once said to me, "Welcome to the Cafe Karma." There's no menu; you just get what you ask for.
Yes, absolutely. It's a yes answer. You put something out of the universe, it says yes. You put something else out, it says yes. It continues to say yes.
And the more clarity you have, and the more aligned it is with your purpose, the quicker it arrives.
Exactly. So that could be for good or bad. If you're real focused in anger and hate, that's going to come back real fast. Absolutely. And vice versa for love. And so one thing I wanted to ask you about is that I know that you're doing this fantastic training to help people find their greatness in those roles, people who can be assertive in that way. But you want to be as expansive as community is, and as diverse as community is. I know you and I spoke about this. And so the ideas of guardians being in the community, not just as people who are tuned in with the law and how to be assertive in it, but also to maybe there's people from all walks of life that don't find that would be fitting to them, but they would maybe love to act as my granddad did. He never retired. He was a servant to the people, in that he set up the community centre and made sure there was a disco for children on Thursdays and a bingo for the older people on Tuesdays. And he did it out of a prefab building and rented a bit of the car park to do it, and put a little mini kitchen in it, and it was done. That lasted in Blakelow here for years, and he got the library built. And so how would people reach out to you if for instance, they were seeing a need in the community, because there has been so many people have slipped through the net, that we would deem okay because they're in privately rented accommodation, or particularly elderly people, those small odd jobs have been facilitated to go into the shops and stuff. The carers haven't been doing that. You know, COVID has become a real good excuse for a lot of services to not do their job. How would you be interested in people branching out that way and representing the Guardians 300 well that way, by being the people in the community wearing the attire and doing things that way? So I don't feel that.
Also,
because
of course that might be more akin to the Angels. We're creating the Angels 300 very shortly, and and the Angels are going to be people who learn the skills to help people change their mindsets. You know, that's a particular skill that I had, and I wrote a whole system that was launched at the University of Central Lancashire, supported by research. And we've had some fantastic results across some very complex demographics, including alcoholism, drug addiction, you know, veteran communities, high security prisons, and then we go, you know, right to the other end of the spectrum. So I would say that that's going to be more of our Angels, when our Angels start. Because we've got nearly 2K people just in the group, and that's only a small percentage of the people that are actually contacting us from outside that don't necessarily want to be part of the group. But equally, when we get the Angels going, we want to give Angels specific skill sets, and also it might very well be as part of their role, what they can do is they can volunteer.
Yes.
You know, the biggest investment you can ever give to yourself is the investment you give to someone else.
So yeah, that's a really great thing to know, that this is an ever expanding river that is taking on its own momentum, and other agencies, not agencies, but groups of people that are very organized are linking in with one another, Guardians included, and merging in and out without ego, just knowing how each group can help each group. And that is what I find to be a beautiful thing. And so
can't be about one person, Jen. Can't be about one person. And the strategy that we've created, I work on the premise that if they take me out and it's all dependent on me, then it dies. But if it's not dependent on me, then it doesn't. It's actually dependent on reconnecting with communities and having a structure that is outside of the current structure that they control.
Yeah, and it's an organism with many individuals within it that will be quite capable of carrying the load of whatever movement, whatever momentum is being created. So, but this was birthed from a person, a veteran's heart. And I know many other different groups have been birthed in similar ways. It does take one person or one day to look inside themselves and reach into their experiences, for the darkest experiences and the lightest experiences, and find the bravery, find the wherewithal, find the oomph that so often many of us haven't got, especially under these systems that are very oppressive. It does take one person somewhere each and every day to do what you have done and reach into that inner self and say, well, the uniform's going on again, so to speak. And so I would just like anybody who's listening to this, and I know you've done an introduction for the Guardians 300, to recognize that each and every one of you that are listening to this have got something that you can dig into, some experience, for better or worse, to make it part of your greatness today to be a part of groups like the Guardians 300, or see a gap, a niche, a need in the community and act on it. Take the action, you know, because your thoughts, your words and your deeds create the reality that you will then manifest into. And so I want people to take a leaf out of your book and not try and replicate that. Just try and find that for themselves, find their own greatness and potentials for themselves. And it might be that they find it within the Guardians 300.
Well, and collaborate.
Remember,
you know, we look for collaboration. As long as we have a sense of purpose that's going in the same direction. I'm very, very aware that there are some people out there that are actually creating strategies that sabotage the main event. So what we're looking for is collaborations that take us in the direction of community. You know, somebody told me something the other day, and he said to me, he said, you know, Mick, so if you looked into a darkened arena, you don't see anyone really in that darkened arena. But if one small light is lit at the far end of the arena, you see the light and everybody else sees it. And of course, for me, it's about you finding your light.
Yes.
What serves you as a human being, and having, and irrespective of whether you feel you're courageous, you know, courage is something that comes. You never know how much courage you have until courage is what's required. And so it's about you finding that light on the inside and letting it shine so that other people can then see it. Now, it doesn't have to be the brightest light in the box, but equally, if it creates an energy, and this is what we're doing with the Guardians, we're creating an energy.
Yeah.
And of course, if you follow any models of psychology, you'll understand that Carl Jung said we have a collective unconscious. That's the etheric.
Yes.
We have that a natural intelligence where we communicate with each other. Of course, people in the military would look at me and think I've lost my marbles by even saying that.
Well, it depends how high up they got up in the military, because at the higher echelons, they've got the psychics and they've got the people like Carl Jung who know his studies very well and know other amazing professors and whatnot studies very, very well, which is how they know how to study people and how they know how to strategize, as they have done, to break down people and break down communities where necessary.
Well, you know, Jen, you learn one thing in the military, even with the best laid plans, no plan survives the first 5 minutes of contact with the opposing force. And the one thing they haven't measured is the level of intellect that's already out there.
Yeah.
And just the ingenuity that people will use. We haven't had 40 or 50 years to plan our riposte, but I can assure you, if it comes from spirit and source, it's got the full backing, because ultimately anything that brings us all closer together is going to end up being formidable. You know, it's an old tenet, isn't it? If the sum of the parts are greater than any one whole, it will work.
Absolutely, dipping into that eternal.
Yeah, when it becomes about the 1%, you know, when it becomes about one person or one person's doctrine doomed, and they're all doomed.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
They'll be shoveling coal, Jen. But they'll be chief
Absolutely. So if so just I know you're a very, very busy man, and you're busy taking your time to speak with us and for the Guardians 300 channel. So one, take your time out to like the video and subscribe. It takes 2 clicks. Share the channel out, please, because there's going to be much more content going up as we go along. And also Mick, how do people, because it's understandable if people don't want to be in any kind of limelight, or they just want the support in different ways, and it takes all different kinds of support. So I know that you have the awesome jumpers, hoodies that you're wearing now, the t-shirts, the caps. How do people support you? Because I know that they can buy the merchandise to show the support that way.
Yeah.
But also, how else can they donate? Can they?
Well, people can make donations. We're just setting that system up with the shop, right. And of course, any donations will go directly to the interface of training or helping somebody recover from something. I'm hoping that what we do is we get as much support as we can for the training. You know, nothing can work on its own if it isn't some form of business. Yes. I have literally spent so many years working with charities. And all the successful charities are actually businesses.
Oh, absolutely.
For you to service a broader community, a larger community, You must have an effective business model, otherwise it's doomed. And does that mean that the business should be allowed to make millions and millions for no apparent reason? No, it doesn't. Actually, one of the things that we prided ourselves on was that every penny that was given to us went to the interface of coaching.
Yeah,
you know,
and I love that.
Lots of admin. We didn't have lots, because equally there are lots of volunteers. You know, if you look at Health for Heroes, you look at some of these, and some of these are failing charities. You know, if you look at how Combat Stress were defunded recently because of the amount of money they spent on real estate. You know, from my perspective, you've lost your way when you believe that's what your organisation's about. From the people, for the people. And if the people are the first thing you focus on, you'll never go far wrong.
That's it.
Never lose your way.
I think charity is, for want of better word, as well, because, you know, under the systems that we're in, it's, for want of better word, that it depicts the model the best for now. But what I see you doing is actually creating a movement of people of like mind, like hearts, that actually are going to have a good impactful change on the communities that they live in. And it's you know, cut into the quick in that this training, which is what I was mentioning earlier, is actually a pathway to healing for a lot of veterans. So when people are donating, or when people are buying the awesome merchandise and stuff, they actually know that it's going directly to not just new skill sets, but those new skill sets inevitably facilitating deep training, deep healing, and re-establishing of those thought processes for veterans. And I know we're all and other people alike.
You know, Jen, there's nothing actually more compelling than when someone gives you a call after you've worked with their son or daughter and they say, you know, thank you for giving us our son back. Now, we're not that egoic that we believe we've done that. All we've done is we've acted as a tour guide with a skill set that allows that person to find their own answers. And that's empowering the individual. I've never yet had a dependency in all the time I've been using transition coaching, because it's literally about the person finding their own learnings, finding their own path, walking their own path and making some mistakes, then learning from it. So you treat one person in a family, the ripples that are created, you know, the number of Royal Marine Commandos, mums and dads that have said, you know, he's eating Christmas dinner with us this year. He doesn't normally do that. He normally lies in bed all day. So when you start to make those ripples soon turn into energetic waves that are unstoppable. And with the Guardians, what I'm saying to anyone out there, you don't necessarily need to be a Guardian or a Peace Constable. Come onto the channel, because what you will simply do is you'll add to the energy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You'll add to the
energy breeds energy.
That's it. You'll add to the frequency and that energetic feedback. And it's like a pebble in a river. It really is. And so, if, like you say, there are so many ways to be a part of this, even just giving your time and
if anyone's aggressive on the channel, just kick them off.
There's no fool suffered. But you know, I just feel that even to the point of sharing this kind of content out, that's an energetic feedback that you're going to gain from, because you're planting that seed of people not feeling the fear factor. That, you know, it's realistic. Yes, we can talk real talk on this channel. We're not going to fool people. We're going to be very real. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be. Fear isn't the only thing out there right now. There is this kind of empowerment.
Well, you know, fear feels real, but it's a complete illusion. Anyone that does spectrum or has experienced spectrum will know that, in essence, there's only one true emotion, and the rest are just, we're trained to learn. We learn them, and they're illusions. How do we know that? Because we spend a lot of years actually helping people change them and get rid of them.
Yes.
So when people get rid of the negatives, they only simply get back to their own undeniable loving connection to themselves, which is the most powerful relationship you can experience anyway.
Absolutely, to that one divine. You know, monsters under the bed are really real to a 5-year-old at times.
That's right.
And, you know, that same bed, as they grow up to be a 10-year-old, the monsters aren't there anymore. And so there's ways for you to be able to face whatever you're facing in the present as an individual and as the collective, to find that there actually really isn't any monsters under the bed. They're just telling you that they are. You know, they've got a recording device.
Most of the monsters are in Downing Street.
They're locked up. They don't want to come out. They're frightened themselves, and so yeah, they're getting married behind closed doors and everything, aren't they? They're not coming out.
Aren't they just? And it's interesting because as this starts to change, and I don't know why, but in some of my meditations, some of my relaxations, I think there's a turning point in August, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see when that power of, you know, how many are we up against changes. How many of these little rats will jump the sinking ship? Because there's no loyalty amongst those kind of thieves. They've got no character.
They're already starting that, aren't they? We're seeing,
they are. Dominic Cummings being one of them.
Yeah, we're seeing
Dominic Cummings being one of them. He's already paving the way for people saying, "Oh, well, he wasn't party to those."
Yeah, and now Fauci and Gates all becoming sacrificial lambs to the hidden shadowy elite now, and so people need to realise that these puppets act all big and powerful, but they're the Wizard of Oz. They're behind a big curtain with a big microphone, you know, trying to make themselves sound bigger. And just like that, when the narrative isn't working on you, they're sacrificial lambs to these people. And the more that they sacrifice their own lambs, the more we get to the crux of the matter of who's really doing this.
As a trainer of leaders, Jenny, I can assure you this, right? Even when you're doing something for a purpose that you really, really believe is for the good of humankind, it takes a lot of minerals to put yourself in certain spaces and to maintain that course.
Yes.
And it takes a lot of leadership, it takes a lot of character and a lot of determination to do things and a lot of energy. Now, when you're doing something as bad as this, you don't need many reasons to actually jump the ship. Because, you know, when you do something as negative and damaging as this, you know, unless your belief is so rock solid, and I don't see that in any of them. What I see is daisies waving in the wind.
Yeah.
Of course, we just need a bit of a stronger wind that'll be created by the energy that we're now creating as people.
Absolutely.
I think you're right. I think there was a nurse who was on, she was an admin person who was on UK column, and she was helping with the spread of the injections, and she said she's waiting for literally the tap on the shoulder to be put on trial. She's begging for that day to be, because then for her it would all be over. So she's not as bad as some people, but she knows she's doing wrong, and she's literally waiting for that tap on the shoulder to be relieved of duty, so to speak. So
I served the Surgeon General a notice of liability, holding him accountable for everything he does with every member of the armed forces from here forwards, and that makes him personally accountable. And of course, he didn't even have the minerals to come down to the front gate and accept it, because he knew what it meant, but he got it anyway. And of course, we think, well, you know, did that really have an impact? But then to find out that he'd been contacting someone that is now a mutual acquaintance to express his concerns over the Nuremberg Code elements of it. Let me tell you, when the pressure starts to come from the other side, and it will come like a tsunami, all these little people with no characters will jump off the ship, because that's the nature of the beast. I've been around politicians a lot. I've met a lot of politicians because of the path I tried to take for veterans, saying we've got a system here that will beat combat stress hands down. And we knew that, and they knew that, by the way. It's about 1/10 of what it would cost to maintain combat stress. But when you get these gatekeepers that are often talentless, and I mean this gently, because if you're not getting results, then you've got to think outside of a box, and they were getting results. A lot of them admitted that they weren't getting results. I remember being stood at a conference in London, and I asked the professors from Oxford and Cambridge what they were professors of, because they are openly admitted what they were doing wasn't working with veterans. And I said, well, you know, why give yourself all these titles if what you're doing does not work? Now, some people might think that's disingenuous, but actually I don't care, because when you start to put yourself up there as something, then it's you know, you don't need to tell somebody that you can kayak or climb. You just go and kayak or climb. Yeah. And for me, it's really simple. Yeah. It's about results. And if you're not getting results, change what you do until you get results.
Yeah.
But of course, they just keep doing the same thing.
Yeah, and it's not acceptable. You know, people need to take responsibility too, that we got here through collective complacency and apathy. You know, too many people, like my granddad, you know, died out after the World War II, and because life gets comfortable, but again, that's deliberately done to create a complacency and an apathetic nature, a laziness, because that is far easier to softly corral until we're in now this fast
look at our boys,
tailspin.
Jenny. Look at our boys. Our boys are no longer being turned into men. Where is their rites of passage? Where is the competitive element to what they should be doing?
Absolutely.
You know, our boys should turn into men. We always had a rites of passage. There was always that element to our community. Boys should become men. It's as simple as that. And
they've taken that away.
Yeah,
they've taken that away from both females and males, and they've done that by attacking the divinities within each and every one of us.
Well, you know, you get a child at 12, 13 years of age who's not sure about their sexuality, and you don't give them direction, and you don't allow them to expand on this, and they're not actually governed by anyone that can give them direction, then they'll make it up as they go along. And equally, they can believe anything at that age.
Or, more worryingly, they'll have outside forces that are all too willing, you know, to put videos out on YouTube, to put games out, to influence them, to channel them. And I'm very cognizant of that with my children, because I won't have anybody else parenting them, which is why they're being homeschooled right now, because I don't trust the teachers, and I did everything I could to corral that school. But they just didn't want to be corralled. So I don't trust the teachers to be informed, balanced judges of character, of good character, in order to be able to look after my children in place of me for any given period of time. And so that was my decision to take that power back. Now, where we need to recognize is that it starts from within. It starts in the home, and then it expands out. And you're right, we need to have beautiful men like yourself, like Graham, being represented in the community actively, like my granddad did, so that people would see, you know, my granddad could walk through, you know, that's his plaque up there, you know, with the Lord Mayor who came to his house every weekend for advice. Harry, tell me this, you know. And so he could walk with his suitcase in the roughest streets of Scotswood, in the nicest streets of Darras Hall, and everybody just knew Harry Roberts. He knew nobody ever touched him, because he had that respect from children and adults alike. And so it is great for children to be seeing this kind of energy re-emerging into the collective, for women to be standing as women, as protectors of the young, as protectors of the children, and for men to be taking action where action is needed in a way that is balanced and whole and from a place of love and healing. And so this actually, which could seem like a really terrible time, can be somewhat of an exciting time if we allow it to be, for the potential of expansion and growth.
It is the biggest moment in history where we have the potential to become more aware. Great. And to realize what serves us spiritually and what does not serve us spiritually.
Absolutely. And get rid of all of this bump that they've been laying on the collective to confuse and distract. So I'm going to make sure, me and Graham are going to make sure we've got all of the links to everything, to the shop, to the awesome merch in the description box below. We're going to make sure that we'll keep touching base with you regularly, even just for 5-10 minute quick interviews to be putting up here, so that people can feel like they've got access to your visions and where you're going with it next. Because I know it's not about you, but you actually are a dynamic man who can inspire people. So I know people are going to want to see you again and again. And we'll find any other links that we need to put in the description box. So I want to say to people, please take the time to share this. Guardians especially. I want each and every guardian right now to press subscribe on this channel, because that will take the numbers up automatically. So where other YouTubers are having to fight and scrap their way through to get over that 1,000 mark so they can be doing live streams from the phone, believe you me, I know the pain. We don't have to do that. If everybody just takes the time, even just in the Guardians groups alone, to subscribe. I'm laying it on you now. I'm putting the guilt trip on and saying, holding the mirror up and saying, why haven't you done it already? And so please, Guardians, do that in order for others to take your lead. The algorithms will then pick that up so others find it easier to take your lead. So that's me laying it down. I'm going to be checking in tomorrow to check that it's been done. Otherwise, I'm going to be in the groups shouting loudly, because this man's taken a lot of time out to help make happen what is happening here. And I know all of you guys are too, out there that are listening to this, that are part of the Guardians 300 already. So everybody needs to work together so that nobody's minute or second is a waste. And so that's why I'm saying that. So I'm saying it in jest, but I'm kind of serious. I will play holy hell. And so this is where I want to thank you, Mick, for taking the time out to speak to us tonight. And just, I know you're super busy, and just giving that momentum to people, giving that hope to people and inspiration to people, because that I know you already have done. And I appreciate you very, very much. And I'll let you go.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, cheers.
It's been great. And for all those other former combat engineers out there, I know Mick mentioned right-hand side, top or bottom of bridge. I was right-hand side, top of bridge, because I'm over 6 foot.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means, but I'm going to smile and go along with it.
The veterans will know, the toffee wrappers will know.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you
Great
so
stuff.
much,
Thank
Mick.
you.
Okay, take
Thanks
care,
now.
everyone.